she had fallen in love with. "I've been a little tied up, setting the stage for your big show," she said. "Destiny is hard work, Richard. I've hardly slept in 4 days." Helvelius laid his strong, warm hand against her spine and gently pushed her back to the scrub sink, back to the iodine and the alcohol and the sickening sweet lemon scent. He bent even lower to speak confidentially into her ear. "I appreciate that, Allie. In fact, I'm a little worried for you." "Don't be," she said. "I've scheduled a quiet little D&C tomorrow, after all the hullabaloo dies down. Uda Heckert from Perinatal's doing it. She'll be very discreet." "And you're still sure that's what you want?" "Don't talk about what I want." Allie involuntarily touched the back of her hand to her mouth, undoing her 5-minute scrub. "It's for the best," she mumbled. "It doesn't have to be like that. This baby could be good for us." Allie clamped her eyes as a new wave of nausea hit her. "Please don't call it a baby," she said through clenched teeth. Helvelius opened his mouth to speak but was cut off. Kathleen Brown's skin tones and hair were perfect at last, and the crew director had just gotten the 30-second signal from New York. Helvelius was hastened into the operating room by one of the Huns, a young man in thick glasses and an oversized yellow surgical gown. "You too, Allie," said Helvelius, looking back at her. "We'll scrub in later." Allie followed him, stooping through the tangle of cables and plastic tubing, holding her dripping wet hands in front of her chest. Helvelius was led to a place on one side of the narrow surgical bed, opposite Kathleen Brown. On the bed sat a boy of 7 who seemed dwarfed by all the cameras and monitors. He had a round, beautiful face with healthy pink cheeks and a snub nose that wiggled as he chewed pensively on his lower lip. The back of his head had been shaved, leaving a halo of curly white-blonde hair. His forehead and scalp were dotted with little squares of white tape from which dangled green, red, and yellow wires. The excited grin on the little boy's face coaxed a smile from Allie. As she passed, she bent to one side and whispered a greeting to the young patient, who laughed in return. But there was no time to talk. Someone reached under her elbow and ushered her to a position behind Helvelius, close to a high, blue-cloth-draped table covered with stainless steel instruments, outside the line of view of the camera. Although a small TV monitor beside her seemed to show a nearly empty operating theater, that was a trick of the camera angle. The room was actually so packed with crew and gear that Allie could barely see the operating table. She strained to get a better view. She had come in at 6 a.m. to police the setup of the film equipment, laying down red tape on the floor to mark off sterile and non-sterile areas. Now she had no way of telling whether her lines were being respected. Still holding her hands in front of her, Allie tightened her fingers into fists as the crew lurched into action around her. Lights blinked, hand signals waved, and on every side technicians darted back and forth or crouched on taut haunches. It was like standing in the middle of a beehive, an anarchy of buzzing and bustling. There was nothing she could do about it. She had been reduced to a bystander in her own operating room. Allie squinted under the sun-like glare of the reflectors. Across the table, Dr. Helvelius and Kathleen Brown could not help blinking, but the young patient at the epicenter of all this hurly-burly did not blink at all. The voice with the Eastern European accent was heard again, counting backward. 15, 14, 13, 12... On the TV monitor, Allie watched the live broadcast of America Today from New York. The network anchor Amy Richmond was talking from her desk. Behind her was a still shot of the 3 gleaming steel and glass high-rise towers that were the core of Fletcher Memorial Medical Center, which she could hear being described as the sprawling flagship hospital of one of the oldest medical schools in the country. We have an unprecedented entree today into the leading edge of medical research, where Dr. Richard Helvelius and his team in Chicago are about to perform a groundbreaking operation. If all goes according to plan, it could be a day to rival the first operation under ether in 1846, or the first heart transplant in 1967. After today, ethicists and philosophers will be on the air.